watch with a soggy field, a 10-9 win for the Broncos, 2 late field goals missed, one by each team, neither quarterback playing well. Bo Nix passing for only 60 yards in the win. Obviously, it is an ugly game. It wasn't fun to watch, but Nate, in the NFL, a win is a win is a win. You will take it, and a month later, we'll forget how ugly it was or otherwise.
Well, no, I don't think we're going to forget how ugly it was. I got to be honest with you. I think that's going to stick with us for a little while because
shades of the Tebow area.
Well, but right? Like as an example, like midway through the game, Cody sent me a text, and because he does his film studies that we post up here on the YouTube channel, and he texted me and he said, "I think we're just going to have to burn this film." And I agree. Frankly, I think there was an incredible amount of ugly football yesterday in the National Football League. It was not the prettiest of days. That is for sure. And it all starts and finishes, frankly, for me in East Rutherford. So I think it was an ugly game. I don't think any of us are going to forget that it was an ugly game. I don't think we're going to forget it anytime soon. But you're right. It counts as a W the same way. It doesn't matter whether it's by 1 point or 100 points. It counts the same. And the Broncos sit at 2-2. I had expected them to be 1-3. So give them a little hat tip for the fact that they're ahead of the curve.
Yeah, Nick's 12 for 25 passing. His first career touchdown pass to Cortland Sutton. No sacks again. Second straight game without a sack. Only hit twice. And as bad as it was, Nick's QBR, the rather new ESPN metric that takes into effect running and a lot of other things, his QBR of 35.3, which is bad. Okay, that's bad. It's a 1 to 100 scale. 50 is average. 35 is bad. It's awful, as a matter of fact. But it was better than Aaron Rodgers, who had 31.4. And I think when you look at all the challenges with handling the ball, Nate, all the slipping, all the really bad situations where you saw Nick struggling with his hand warmers and towels. He was asked after the game if he thought about wearing a glove. He had never worn one before and decided not to. But Aaron Rodgers has been there and done that for virtually everything in NFL football. And if he was having trouble holding the ball, I mean, plenty of shots on television were showing it slide out of his hand. He was frustrated. Then I can't really blame Bo Nix for having the same issue. It was just a tough day to throw the football.
I got to be honest with you. I'm happy he didn't wear the glove. Because it was not something that he had done before. And
that's not the first time to try it.
Yeah, I actually think that could have potentially been even worse for him to try something new like that. The only way that I would have been comfortable with it is if he had been doing that when they were practicing in West Virginia, because we know the weather was bad all over the East Coast all of last week. So if it had been something that he had actually had some experience in, and I mean more than just practice, I mean a little bit kind of full speed type of thing. Other than that, I'm actually happier watching him fuss around with a towel and all that kind of stuff than necessarily messing with something that he is just simply not used to.
Yeah, and then the trick with that is when you're down. I mean, look at this. Cortland Sutton had 3 catches, 60 yards, and the touchdown. And maybe the play that broke it open to the 24-yarder down the middle of the field, that it maybe seemed like, okay, maybe Nix is getting out of this funk in the second half. But all other Broncos receivers, and get this number, Nate, 9 catches for no yards. All other receivers, abysmal. But in the end, Bo Nix didn't really seem to get shaken. He just kept coming back, doing his thing. That's good. He didn't appear rattled. He appeared a little frustrated, but not rattled, and that's normal. Rodgers had the same thing. Sean Payton had a chance to talk about the game on the weather and the impact or lack thereof on his quarterback's confidence.
Yeah, I'm not interested in the – yeah, you had to pay attention to the game, and you would say the weather was a factor, with the balls – but we'll look at the tape and try to improve on that.
What was the key to getting?
That's it. I mean,
yeah, but you never lost confidence.
Heck no.
What was the key?
At some point, we'll stop with the confidence. This kid is confident now. I should send him out to dinner with every one of you, and you'll see. He played well.
Well, first of all, each one of those reporters, if I'm being honest, would appreciate the fact that they could go out to dinner with Bo and actually talk to him and not have to listen to Sean Payton's snarkiness all the time, and actually be able to have a conversation one-on-one with Bo Nix. But the Broncos will never let that happen because they overly protect their players to a ridiculous stretch. That said, this is a guy who's confident. Here's one of the things that we've seen all the way through the first 4 games. Because I know we're doing 17 games now and all of that, but you just finished the first quarter of the season and you were 500, right? First quarter of the season, right? In the books, you're 500. That said, he has maintained, I'm talking about Bo Nix at this point, he has maintained a relatively flat heartbeat all the way through this. Has he been rattled Before, yes, of course. That doesn't surprise me.
No.
You start hearing some footsteps, guys coming after you, throw a bad pass. He did that in Seattle. Those kinds of things are going to happen. I think the thing that has impressed me is that it doesn't appear to this point that when he comes back out of the sideline, back onto the field after a mistake or after a 3-and-out or after a whatever, that he's carrying that baggage with him. Now, I think because he is a competitor the way that he is and has played as much as he has, my guess is he does carry some of that with him. But he does a very good job of not showing it and not allowing it to influence his play.
Yeah, and that's the trick, right? I mean, you're going to have bad days. You're going to have good days when you're a rookie. Everybody can't be Jaden Daniels, apparently, and just pop into the league fully formed as one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So, obviously, in Bo Nix, you expect to see some growth, and you expect to see that take some time. But the point you're making, look, the slow heartbeat, right?
Mm-hmm.
The short memory. We talk about that with pitchers in baseball. You throw a pick, you have a bad play, you have to let it go. Sometimes the other guys get paid too. The guy might catch a good pitch, hits a home run. What are you going to do about it? You're going to get upset and let it throw you off your game, or are you just going to go after the next guy? Nick seems to have that mentality, which is really good. And it's good in games like this because it would have been easy to get flustered and get away from things, especially in the first half where Sean Payton, again, during a game in which it was no further than 3 points off, continued to call more passing plays than running plays in the first half, despite Nick's talents throwing it. Now, that changed in the second half as the Broncos started getting some traction, and more about that later. But Nick's played well. And in the end, the win is the win. Now you get the Raiders, also at 2-2 next week. The week after that, you get the Chargers, who appeared to have the Chiefs right where they wanted them and couldn't seal the deal. I am still the belief this team is a 5 or 6 win team. I'd love for it to be more than that, and I'd be delighted to be wrong. But with the Raiders and the Chargers being, I would fair to say, these are winnable games. I'm not sure you're going to say the Broncos are likely to win them both, but are they winnable? Yes. All of a sudden, you could find yourself at 4-2 or even 3-3, 6 games through the season. For the Broncos, I would say that is definitely not only a positive development if they finish that way, but it also means that the rebuild would probably be a little bit ahead of schedule, even if this team isn't a playoff contender.
Well, yeah, I still think it comes back to the talent that's on the roster, and I don't think there's enough talent on this roster as it is. But yes, would they be ahead of the curve? Sure. And look, I said 5 wins. I said it at the beginning of the season. And like I said, they're ahead right now by 1 from where I thought they would be. So if that's the case, you give yourself a chance to be able to get to 6, to get to 7. Is this an above 500 team? No, I still don't believe that it is. I'm sorry. But I'm impressed. I think they got lucky yesterday. I think they got very lucky yesterday, to be honest. But I think that all of that said, a win is a win. I'm going back to what you said at the start of the segment. A win is a win, and you take it and you run with it and you move on to the next game. And the beauty of that is you're back home after spending that entire time on the East Coast, which I think was smart for them to do. I think that, we see West Coast teams, we see East Coast teams do that. I don't think there's any fault at all in the Mountain Time Zone doing the exact same thing, which is to just stay there and not worry about traveling back and forth, especially when you knew the weather was going to be bad. So I don't think that it was a mistake by any stretch. I think it helped. I know that Sean Payton addressed that earlier today. Like, well, did it help? And he was like, well, I mean, maybe it was a factor. But he talked more about what their play was, but he also said, hey, teams like the 49ers do this all the time. If they got to go play a couple on the East Coast, they're just going to stay there. And so I think it was very, very smart. Look, we don't see the Nuggets go on a road trip, Sean, and start bouncing back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, right? You just stay and you
Baseball
keep going.
Teams, hockey teams, same thing.
So I think it's smart what Sean Payton and the Broncos did in terms of their practice and their opportunities to stay there on the East Coast.
I do too. And late in the week last week, Payton did talk about maybe this wouldn't be the only time they would do this. Maybe they would look at this being something a little more regular on a couple games where they're back at the East Coast, and that does make sense. In this case, I think whatever, the team bonding, the team time away, that's all well and good. It's even simpler than that. You knew a hurricane was coming. It was going to make travel difficult. You avoided all those problems, but by at least avoiding a potential negative problem, that's a positive. So it turns out well. They get the win. That's a big part of it. You mentioned they were lucky. They were lucky. Obviously, when Zerline misses a field goal that would have won the game, which we know he has plenty of distance for, you're lucky. Lutz could have more, maybe not put it away, but certainly made them have to drive for a touchdown. He missed. You got lucky that didn't cost you. You got a little unlucky, though. Late in the game, Aaron Rodgers fumbled the ball, and there was a clear recovery by the Broncos, and it would have been a touchdown. Now, reviews made it pretty clear that Rodgers did. It was close, but Rodgers fumbled that ball. That should have been 6 for the Broncos. The referees, one, did something wrong. They are actually being told now by the NFL, when you have plays like that, let it play out and fix it upstairs in the replay. The refs did not do that. Secondarily, because the Broncos were out of challenges, they couldn't even challenge. So that's some really bad luck for the Broncos that would have basically put the game away. So I actually give them some credit for that. It doesn't count. They had to win it the way they won it. But this team played pretty well. Garrett Bowles had a chance to talk after the game, the longest tenured Bronco at this point. How about that? Garrett Bowles about the win.
This is what it is, and that's what we needed to do. But that's what we're capable of doing on this team, man. From the special teams to the defense holding their own, to the offense, to just controlling the tempo and, just grinding it out and knowing some things, the meter doesn't always go your way. You got to control the meter. And, it was swinging pretty good back and forth. But, finally we settled in and, we put a drive together and, it was one of the most important drives in the game. And I'm just very proud of this team.
Maybe weather was an equalizer, and I don't think there's any question about that. Even Sean Payton at his halftime interview with television said that the weather favored them so much, meaning is it's always hard on the favorite when the weather it makes it kind of mucky and messy for both teams, and the underdogs tend to benefit from that. So that works out. But they do get the win. It's a big one because you think about it, and I had some people texting me after the game. They go, "Oh, well, that's ugly." And I was like, "Well, look at the other side of the coin." All the Jets fans are saying that too, but they have to eat an L. So in the end, you'll take what you can get. If you have to play an ugly game, if you have to be out there and freeze your tail off and try to avoid getting pneumonia or something for a full football game, you might as well come away with a W. The Broncos did that. They get a little confidence in even Bo Nix's performance. We look at it and go, 60 yards, a touchdown. And normally you're looking at it as a disaster. And you're saying, well, okay, weather, hey, he wasn't any really worse than Aaron Rodgers, and you'll take it. If it was a loss, I think the narrative surrounding that might be a little bit different. So a big win for the Broncos. Good news for them. And if you're looking for the perfect place to work, play, exercise, and socialize, then look no further than the Denver Athletic Club, right in the heart of downtown Denver. As a DAC member, you'll enjoy top-notch amenities like the full fitness center. Of course, you expected that. That's where you're going to go work out. But there's a licensed childcare center, spa, massage, Pilates, a golf simulator. There's a cold plunge pool, a bowling alley, and more. Basically, if you want to do it, you can do it. But what truly sets the DAC apart is not all the stuff that's there. It's the community and its vibrance. The member-owned club is all about you, offering year-round social events, co-working, dining, and fun for the entire family. The Denver Athletic Club is truly a club for your whole life. So look at joining the DAC today. Visit denverathleticClub.cc for all the details. Very sad news coming out of the NBA world today, and the Denver Nuggets as NBA great and true legend of the game. Dikembe Mutombo passes away at the age of 58 from brain cancer. A shocking bit of news. Obviously, most people did not know that he was ill. And you look at Mutombo's time with the Nuggets, obviously. We think of the great underdog series against George Karl's Seattle Supersonics, in which the Nuggets upended them, the first number 8 seed to knock off a 1 behind Mutombo. Mutombo, a justified Hall of Famer, given his career numbers, a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, 8-time All-Star, 6-time All-Defense, 3-time All-NBA, 3-time block shot champs, won the rebounding title twice, the only 2-time winner of the Walter Kennedy Citizenship Award, the second leading shot blocker in the history of the NBA, and maybe even most importantly, Nate, the NBA's first global ambassador. We have a quote running from Adam Silver at the bottom of the screen, where Silver talked about some of the impact there. But the first ever global ambassador, remember that after the Dream Team run in the playoffs, there was an explosion of basketball around the globe. Mutombo really spearheaded down in Congo, where he had come from, born in Kinshasa, and spearheaded a lot of the African movement into the NBA. Now there is an NBA Africa. The number of players from Africa have exploded into the NBA. The NBA literally looks different and better with direct impact from Dikembe Mutombo. That is an extraordinary legacy.
Yeah, it really is. And you're seeing an outpouring right now from the teams and things like that, but you're also seeing things like from Joel Embiid, who is from Cameroon. You're seeing the folks that recognize that there was this international presence and this outreach that needed to happen. I think just from the sake of basketball in general, NBA, WNBA, any of it, I think that it needed to have this incredible global outreach, and in particular on the continent of Africa. But it needed it needed a face. It needed that ambassador that Adam Silver referenced. It's the same sort of thing that Joel Embiid said earlier today, recognizing that it wasn't enough to just say we want to see our sport enhanced across the globe. I think that what needed to happen, and what did happen thanks to Mutombo, is the ability for these international kids to see someone who took the steps and accomplished it for themselves, and their ability to see themselves in that person and see that opportunity for themselves. And I think that's why one of the stars, if you will, of the NBA that came out very quickly with a statement was someone like Joel Embiid.
Yeah, Mutombo originally, when he went to Georgetown, went there on a USAID scholarship designed to bring talent from across the globe to the United States. He actually came to Georgetown to become a doctor, but he was recruited then by John Thompson to play basketball for obvious reasons. But remember, even at that point in time, and even after winning Big East Defensive Player of the Year twice, he was an intern in Congress. He was an intern at the World Bank. This is a man who graduated with 2 different degrees in linguistics and diplomacy. And by the way, he spoke 9 languages, 5 different Central African languages, and also French, Spanish, Portuguese, and English. A wildly intellectual, intelligent, and erudite player and person who understood how to better put the face of the NBA and basketball. That the NBA could not have found a better avatar to place not only in Africa, but literally around the world, given his ability, his stature, both in reputation and in height, and attitude. We're talking about a guy that what you hear today from everybody, and that includes people who had the opportunity to cover him as I did starting out my career. I was very fortunate to be able to cover some of that team. And when you look at the way Mutombo greeted everybody, all you hear about smile, good attitude, good mood all the time. This was a guy that loved life, loved humans, and he will simply not be easy to be replaced on the basketball stage, because really up until the last few months, this is a guy that tirelessly spread the word of basketball as a way to improve your lives around the planet with extraordinary success. So Silver's statement, which is not standard boilerplate statement you get from commissioners, it is personal, it is emotional. I think that speaks to that.
Yeah, and the same thing happened with Masai Ujiri, who was extremely emotional.
Been friends for almost 30 years.
Yeah, and friends with him, and was a part of the Global Ambassador Program and the things that they were doing in Africa. Here's what you can hope for going forward with the global programs and with what Dikembe Mutombo did. What you can hope for is that the current players, especially the current international players, and as big as Mutombo was in terms of personality and likability, there are a number of players, whether they are superstars or not, that can carry this international torch. And what you're hoping for is that what comes from this is players that recognize that they can pick up that torch and have that same opportunity to make a difference like Mutombo did. That's what you hope for. And I'd like to see that continue to be the case when some of these players are done playing and they have the ties internationally that Mutombo did. I'm hoping that that is in fact the case, and that this idea of this bridge that he was so instrumental in building with the international programs, that somebody says, okay, I got this. Yep. And picks it up and runs with it.
And let me go even further than that. Here's my free advice to the NBA. If anyone there is listening, you have a terrific opportunity here to create a Dikembe Mutombo Award. And just over the last couple of years, the NBA changed most of its awards, gave them names when they don't have sponsorships. This is the perfect opportunity. Give the Dikembe Mutombo Award out every single year to the best internationally born player in the NBA that season. That would be a phenomenal way to honor him, as he brought in so many into the league and continued to generate that. That would be a wonderful gift. It would make an awful lot of sense because it continues to grow the global game. If you have an award that is basically the top international player, well, how many players come into the NBA wanting to win that, at least before maybe they even get as good to win the MVP like Joel Embiid? These are the kind of things that would appropriately honor Mutombo, whose number, by the way, is retired not only by the Nuggets, by the Hawks. Two different numbers, in part because of not only the player but the person. That would be the next step. Were I talking to Adam Silver over lunch, that's what I'd recommend to him. The Dikembe Mutombo Award for the greatest international born player of the NBA in any particular season would be a wonderful way to honor him and make an awful lot of sense. Obviously, there's an outpouring of support in the Denver community, and that will continue. We'll have an opportunity to talk to our editor-in-chief of Miley Sports Magazine and another person that knows Mutombo's story inside and out with Doug Ottawa. We'll talk about that more tomorrow. But obviously, a major loss for the Nuggets community, for the basketball community, for the global basketball community, as the great Dikembe Mutombo passes away at the age of 58. As we turn our attention back to the Broncos, Nate, about a week ago, you and I were talking about the possibility that the best solution for Javonte Williams may be to find a different home for the Broncos and Williams to say this isn't working and move along. Well, it's not. It wasn't Derrick Henry, for example, last night, but Javonte Williams in the muck, 16 carries, 77 yards, 4.8 per, looked good, ran for power. I thought was opportunistic in the run game, looked like he was hitting the holes again. He looked more or less to me to be refreshed. It's worth noting that that's the highest yards per carry he's had since playing against Green Bay in week 7 of the 2023 season, when he went for 5.47, but he had gone 13 straight games without averaging 4 yards per attempt, got almost to 5, and looked good. Said after the game, definitely the best performance this season. It felt good to get back to hitting holes like I'm used to and seeing the field open up again.
Loved seeing it. Now show it to me again.
Right.
Show it to me again
Fair.
on Sunday against the Raiders. Show it to me again in another week against the Chargers. Show me that you can consistently do it. Because the O-line played well. They gave him some of those holes and they gave him those opportunities. The same thing with Jaleel McLaughlin. But I mean, maybe it's the skepticism in me. But I just can't all of a sudden say, oh, look, Javonte Williams is back after one game. I can't bring myself to do that, Sean. He's got to do it more consistently. He, like you said, he doesn't have to be Derrick Henry. He doesn't have to be. But he's got to be better than what he's been. And that, to me, is what I'm waiting to see. And I think the only way fans are going to be able to say 33 is back to what he should be is if he can do it consistently. And he can put this type of thing together, and it doesn't have to be 4.8. It's nice when it is, but can he put together something where he is, in fact, somewhere between, say, 3.8 and 4.5 per game? Because if you can back that, for example, with what McLaughlin did, averaging 5.1, right? If you can back that when you do take Javonte off the field, then all of that can make this running game better, which I think is going to make Bo Nix better. But I've got to see it more consistently. That's the thing. Like, I want it. So, like, I like Javonte. I really do. I like Javonte Williams. I want to see this succeed for him with the Broncos. I just haven't seen it consistently enough to where I'm all of a sudden going to wipe clean what's behind me and what's in the back of my head, which is what I've seen for the last year.
Well, your skepticism is warranted, Nate. And not only that, it is shared. It is shared by Broncos coach Sean Payton,
right,
who talked after the game. One, you come into the game knowing the Jets were a better pass defense team than a run team. They had already given up 310 rushing yards in their first 2 games. And then they were better against the Patriots, but the Patriots are terrible. So you knew that was the case. Peyton, even after the game, said, we blocked them. It's easy when it is wet as it was, but those guys up front were the key. It certainly is. You know the snap count. Your offensive linemen get to move forward on their first step. But Denver did outgain them on the ground, 126-64. That's a good sign and a good performance in a game in which the running game was clearly going to matter on a day like that when neither quarterback could hold on to the ball. So I think that's warranted, and I think that Peyton understands that. McLaughlin was really good as well. We know that he's a change of pace guy. You don't give it to him 20 times a game. and he was effective. And obviously bad news for Tyler Bidet. We'll find out more about that. Gets hit in the lower back area on the play that causes a fumble as well. He loses that fumble. Got back to the sideline and then ended up having to be carted off for a while. The Broncos said he was questionable, which hopefully means they did the x-rays and all the stuff and didn't find anything serious, but obviously he did not return to the game. Hopefully we find out a little bit more soon about that, and best of luck for Tyler Bidet, who looked like he was going to have an opportunity in this game to be the Broncos' leading rusher, and the injuries took that away. That happens. That's football, but good for the Broncos that Williams was able to step up, not let any of that bother him, and come out and perform and do the job. If the Broncos can cobble together some semblance of a running game, whether it's with Williams, McLaughlin, Bidet, in a couple weeks, Estime can return for the Chargers game, assuming he's better at the ankles. You can get this done by committee. It makes fantasy fans crazy, but it is a perfectly viable way to win NFL games in 2024, presuming the Broncos can continue it and the Sean Payton can commit to it.
Yeah,
that's maybe the part you're talking about to help out Nick.
And that's the thing, is it's like, I think he wants to commit to it. I just think he hadn't seen a lot of it until yesterday. And I think that's the piece that's why I say, okay, now show me again. Show me again this Sunday. Then show me again the following Sunday. Then I mean, the domino effect. Y'all just keep it going, one right after the other. That's what you need to be able to see out of Javonte Williams. And for that matter, out of Jaleel McLaughlin, right? Because you know that Sean Payton wants to be a running back by committee. So if that's going to be the case, that means you need to see it out of more than one dude. You can't just hand it to one. Oh, this is the only guy that's doing good, so we just got to give him the ball 27 times a game. Because again, not Derrick Henry. So was it encouraging? Yes. Am I writing it down in Sharpie? No, I am not. That is very clearly my opinion. Yeah. I'm encouraged, but I'm sure as heck not going too crazy with my optimism.
And I think that's fair. But for the Broncos, what you are seeing is signs, and you brought up about how much it helps Bo Nix, and it most certainly does help Bo Nix in all sorts of ways that are both obvious and not so obvious. But Nix himself referred to it after the game, said it helped that we were able to run the ball and they were on their heels a bit. When you can run and get into manageable third downs, that's where you want to be as an offense. That's why we moved the ball better in the second half. And in the second